In previous videos, I talked about the gear I was taking on our 9-day cruise to New England and Canada. And in my last video, I gave a brief summary of the trip and I talked about the gear that I didn't use. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the first 4 days of this 9-day cruise, starting at Cape Liberty in Bayonne, New Jersey, and then continuing on the third day to Boston, Massachusetts, and finally on to Portland, Maine. This video you're viewing now was shot from the deck of the ship in Bayonne of Lower Manhattan with my Nikon Z8 and 70 to 200 2.8 zoom. Now this shot here was as we were pulling out looking into New York Harbor, shot with the Z6 and the 24 to 200, but the rest of these pictures from Bayonne were all shot with my 70 to 200 2.8 on the Z8. Some I added the 2-time teleconverter, and I was shooting in shutter priority mode using the landscape picture control. And the reason I took my 70 to 200 2.8, normally I don't take that lens on a vacation, but I knew where the ship was docked, and I wanted to get these shots of Lower Manhattan. And I'm glad I did, because although I had my 24 to 200, and that's a lens I normally take with me on a cruise or on other vacations, the 70 to 200 is sharper, and of course it gives me the equivalent of 400 with the 2-time converter. And here you could see the Brooklyn Bridge, and in the background, the Manhattan Bridge. And this shot here was shot at, without the 2-time converter, at 110 millimeters of all the people that were up on the deck as the ship started on its way around 3:45 p.m. in the afternoon. Now, I was up on the 12th deck of the ship taking those shots you just saw. And the next day, as we were cruising, and on the second day was just cruising, we were on our way to Boston, I discovered how to get to the front of the ship. It was from the 4th deck, and you had to go up some steps. And it was great because I was right at the front of the ship, and that's where I took these shots. And I wish I had been there on the first day. Wish I had known how to get to that spot, because I would have been able to be right at the front of the ship as we went under the Verrazano Bridge. But I missed out on that. So I guess I should have did some more research on how to get around the ship. Now, we were cruising, like I said, on day 2 and then towards the end, and there's a lot to do on a ship, but as a photographer, I like to take pictures, right? So even though we weren't in port, or we were out to sea, I spent the second day and then the last 2 days just going around the ship taking pictures. And you'll see those pictures from the last 2 days in a future video. And this was looking off the back of the ship, and all these pictures on the ship in this video were shot with the 24 to 200 f4 to 6.3 zoom, and it has a great range, and it's great for photography like this. So I shot this of the underneath one of the lifeboats looking out to sea, and then this gentleman was walking by, and I think it adds a little something to the shot. And this was at 24 millimeters. And same thing here, 24 millimeters looking out, and then I noticed out of the corner of my eye someone walking, and again, it just adds a little something to the picture. And this one I really like, the reflection of the rail, and then this woman came walking by, and this is probably my favorite shot from the second day. And then I noticed this gentleman just kind of looking out under the lifeboats, and this shot was at 160 millimeters. So it's a really great lens for stuff like this with that great range of focal lengths. Now, this was the next morning when we were on our way to Boston. It was up early. This is 6:30 in the morning, and I just thought it was really cool the way this looked with just this one light on. I don't know if that was a cabin or part of the ship's crew. And here we are right before sunrise, just outside of Boston Harbor. as the ship was coming in. And I usually try to get up early to see, what's happening. And this was sunrise on that day. I know it's a cliche picture. Everybody takes sunrise pictures, and I do too. And here we are coming in to Boston, and these two boats were coming out. And noticed this sailboat going out past us and grabbed this shot. And this shot was at 100 millimeters. Now, as we were coming into Boston, we were passing Logan Airport, and it was constant airplanes taking off. It seemed like every 30 seconds there was a plane taking off. And here we are with the skyline of Boston as we were coming in. And I turned around and looked up, and here was another plane flying right over the ship. And that was at 54 millimeters. That was around 7:30 a.m. Now, after breakfast, we left the ship and we got on one of those hop on, hop off buses and took a little tour around Boston. And this shot was from the bus. And then we went over to Boston Common. We got off the bus and walked around. And I really didn't take many pictures in Boston. I've been there before, and I just wanted to stay with everybody. A lot of times when we do these things, I just take off by myself. But this time I decided to stay with everyone. And this is in Boston Common of that bridge. And then it was back on the bus. I took a few shots of these buildings, and then we had lunch in Faneuil Hall. And there was a lot going on outside Faneuil Hall, and that's where this shot was taken. And then it was back to the ship because dinner was at 5 o'clock. So I didn't really shoot a lot in Boston. So I was up early the next day and was out around 7 o'clock. I the front of the ship again as we came into Portland, Maine, and it's another place I had been before. And these shots here were just from the front of the ship again as the ship was pulling in. And there's a bunch of boats docked here. I don't know what this was, this red boat, but a lot of little sailboats. So as the ship was coming in, I shot a bunch. And again, this was all with the 24 to 200 on the Z8 with that landscape picture control. And I always shoot raw. I guess I should have mentioned that early on, but I always shoot raw. And then I converted these in Lightroom when I got back. So here's part of the skyline of Portland, again, from the ship. And I noticed as I was leaning over the front of the ship, they were tossing the lines to these people on shore who were going to tie the ship up. So it was nice to get a few action shots here as they pulled that huge rope and secured the ship. So I then went in, had breakfast with the family and our friends, and then I left the ship and took a walk along the waterfront there. And here's where I switched lenses. I went to my 14 to 30 f4, and this shot here of the U.S. Custom House was at 19 millimeters. And I kept the lens on as I walked down. Not sure what the street name was, but it was the street right alongside the waterfront there, and shot a few pictures of this sculpture. Then I was headed back to the ship and I put on the 24 to 200 to get this shot of this bicycle in front of the building. And I took a few more shots as I walked down the street. And I was going to continue on. I noticed some churches, but it was kind of an uphill walk and I was kind of tired at that point. Even though I was only out for an hour, but had been up late the night before. So I just headed back to the ship and noticed this little train. And I believe it takes people on just a little tour of the city along the waterfront. I don't think it goes that far. So as I was walking back towards the ship, I finally got to see the entire ship. Because of the ports we were in, I really couldn't get a good picture of the entire ship, and I still haven't gotten a good picture of the entire ship because this was backlit, but it does show you the size of the ship. I think it could hold over 4,000 passengers. So I took a bunch of shots of the sailboats. That's one of my favorite subjects. And that's about it for Portland. So the next day we were on our way to Canada, and my next video will talk a little bit about that. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions or comments on this video, please leave them in the comments below. I usually publish a new video every Monday morning and Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So thanks for watching, and I will talk to you soon.